So Java database connectivity we have already discussed, correct? So one more time, we will just see how this Java database connectivity works. Correct. This is the fundamental and basics. On top of it, you will see this JPA and Hibernate basically. Everybody got it? Correct. So whenever we have any Java applications, right? From this Java API, you are connecting to a database using that your drivers, right? Which is very specific to any particular database, right? So the implementation is provided from that database owners, correct? If it is a Postgres, so Postgres, they will provide the connector jar. If it is a Oracle, they will provide the connector jar, correct? So from using that driver manager and this driver, you can connect to any kind of a database. Either it is a SQL Server or Oracle, or it is a Postgres, correct? Now, there is some challenges, right? If you are talking about, especially that is we have discussed, so every time we need to embed our SQL queries inside the Java. So there can be a multiple challenges. Connection pooling is also another challenge, how to maintain the connections, right? Then there is also a challenge, how to maintain the transactions, right? Maybe you heard about that ACID properties, right? Atomicity, consistency, durability, and integrity, correct? So the atomicity, entire this, whatever you are doing, all this, you can say operation into a database, right? It has to, if you are maintaining the transaction, so you need to maintain the state, right? So let's say, right? So these four properties are also part of your transactions. So how to manage the transaction means, if you wanted to, simple सा scenario is, I can say, आप ऐसा कंसीडर कर सकते हो, जब भी आपको किसी पर्टिकुलर डेटाबेस में टू टेबल्स में यदि आपको इंसर्ट करना है या अपडेट करना है, राइट? तो या तो वो कंप्लीटली इंसर्ट या अपडेट होगा बोथ द टेबल्स में, या फिर वो नहीं होगा किसी भी टेबल में, सो दैट यू विल मेंटेन द कंसिस्टेंसी, करेक्ट? इन केस यदि अब इन बिटवीन कुछ यदि पावर फेलियर्स हो जाते हैं, कुछ और प्रॉब्लम्स हो जाते हैं, स्टिल यू विल मेंटेन द, यू कैन से, पर्टिकुलरली स्टेट ऑफ द डेटाबेस। ऐसा नहीं होगा कि टिल सम पॉइंट यू हैव ऑलरेडी इंसर्टेड, कुछ डेटा इंसर्ट हो गया, कुछ नहीं हुआ है, कुछ अभी भी अलग अलग स्टेट में है, करेक्ट? सो लाइक दिस, ये जो फोर प्रॉपर्टीज है, दीज आर वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट इन टर्म्स ऑफ ट्रांजिशन। सो वो भी एसक्यूएल में हमें, यदि आप जावा डेटाबेस कनेक्टिविटी की यदि बात करोगे, तो यू नीड टू हैव अ मैनेज थ्रू अ, राइट, connection dot commit and connection dot rollback. So you need to explicitly write this condition कि when you want to commit and when you want to roll back it, correct? These two methods are available into a connection object. So these things are very important. Apart from that, performance overhead, how and whenever you are connecting to a database, how many times you are connecting, that is also another challenge here. So considering a scenario when you are working with the multiple tables and each table will have a, let's say, 50 or 100 columns, how you will maintain and how you will basically process this data. Batch update, batch delete, or batch insert, like this. These are also a challenge, how you will manage it, correct? Then another thing is that at any point of time, if you will change the database, right, there is also impact in your code. In that scenario, what will happen here, you also need to change. So let's say in postgres में अभी आपके पास में text and serial है, right? But maybe this will not be available into your oracle you will have a varchar and varchar 2, correct? So like there is some difference between that, some of that SQL commands also, and it is also impacting to your code, correct? And even anyway, it's basically, if you are using a simple statement, as far as that SQL injection is point, it is not very safe. So we use that prepare statement, but still there are some challenges. Clear? So for that, basically we moved into a what we can call as for ORM framework, object relationship mapping. So we create that similar Java objects which is mapped with that particular table, and there will be some properties with the Java data types. There is a similar kind of a table columns with the similar kind of a data types into a database, correct? So like this, you will map it. So you will have a Java class, let's say student, you will have ID, first name, last name, email. Here you have a ID, first name, last name, email. And with the help of Hibernate, you will match it. So ultimately you are working with the Java objects, but it will be saved directly into a database. So these things will be taken care by the particularly is your ORM framework, right? And Hibernate is one of the most popular framework, right, which is provide all kind of a support. Okay. Now, if you talk about so how it works, so if you are talking about JPA, so JPA is basically providing is a specification from the Java, and Hibernate provides the implementation. So as we discussed already, when we are talking about particularly Hibernate, so people used to work with the configuration files, right? XML configuration. So there is a mains configuration file where you specify all the HBM. So if you have 100 tables, so you need to create 100 HBM files where which will provide that table and Java class mapping. Which table is mapped with the which Java class, and that which field is mapped with the which particular column, right? And there will be a main HBM file or configuration file where you will give all these HBM file entries. So working with the these XMLs and giving an entries and all this, it is not very what we can say feasible, and it is also performance overhead. So that's why we moved into an JPA. So JPA is nothing but that what we can call as specification provided from the Java, right? And that Hibernate is the implementation provider for that. Okay, so we need that Hibernate just when we are working with the JPA also. So here, if you are using a JPA, simple words, we don't need to go with the any configuration and XMLs and all this. We simply use the annotations. So using the annotations, we specify and we can tell ki which particular column is mapped with which particular field and which table is mapped with the which particular Java class. Clear? Also, JPA, you will have a concept for JPQL. So this JPQL is also query language, but in the form of Java class. So rather than you will write select star from, you can say from the table name, here you will write from the Java class name like that. So similar kind of, but the advantages of JPQL is it is always independent for any database server. So it will work with any database server because it is not, the syntax will not be dependent on any particular database server. Okay. So these are the another advantages of a JPA. So if you talk about how these things works, so you will basically, you will have a persistent unit, right? So from this persistent unit, it's you need to configure where you will configure all these details for your Java class objects, right? And then also all the connection details and everything. And from this, you will create an entity manager factory, and from entity manager, you will create an entity manager. And using the entity manager, you will manage the entities. So we already discussed that what is an entity. When we have discussed the ER diagram, relationship ER diagram and everything we have discussed already, attributes and everything, correct? So this is the same concept we are using here, right? The entity is referred to or nothing but your Java class, right? Which is mapped with the table, correct? So you can also use a different kind of queries, different methods to work on these entities. If you wanted to basically save, add, update, delete or whatever, you can just do it. Clear? So there is a 3 steps. You need to read the persistent.unit. You need to create an entity manager factory, and you need to create that entity manager. Okay. So this way, basically you can understand that how it works here. So this is a basically, and here to execute a query, and then basically they also provide that to start a transaction and end the transaction. So begin transaction, end transaction methods are also there so that you can manage the transaction also, right? In Java code. So that is also a facility from the JPA. So JPA allows you to avoid writing a DDL in database specific dialect 2 of SQLs. So you don't need to write this very specific SQL for a particular database into a Java. Another thing, instead of mapping XML, you can use a Java annotations. Right? JP allows you to avoid writing a DML in the database specific, right? Any DML, DDL, right? So you don't need to write into a database specific SQLs, correct? So JP allows you to load and save Java objects and graph without the DML languages. So still if load means you wanted to select from the database. If any point of time you wanted to get the data from the database, you can easily select it, you can get it. You don't need to depend on completely on the any other these queries. So there are a simple methods and you can get it. Correct? So when do you need to perform a JPQL? So JPQL we discuss, right? It is a Java specific query language, right? Or JPA specific persistent specific query language. It is not dependent. It looks like a SQL, but it is not dependent any other database. So it will work on with any database. So your application is completely independent on the database, right? Suppose a scenario, if you are developing a code into development with the Postgres, but you are migrating onto a Oracle in the production. In that scenario, what will happen here? Sites, if you use some of the syntax bound to a Postgres, this syntax will not work with the, you will get some problem when you are executing this query, right? And most of the times you will see this kind of scenarios, right? So these are the advantages, right? So what is the difference between Hibernate and JPA? So JPA is just a specification, meaning there is a no implementation. You can annotate your class as much as you would like to with the JPA annotation, right? But without any implementation, nothing will happen here. So this implementation basically provided from the Hibernates to provide under the hook functionality here. So all these things are basically done by your Hibernate. Correct. So when you use a Hibernate with JPA, you are actually using the Hibernate JPA implementation. For that, you need to use that Hibernate jars in your class path to support all these annotations. Clear? So when you use straightforward, right? Hibernate, you are locking into an implementation because other ORM may use a different method in the configuration. So there is also a chances where if you wanted to use that implementation provider rather than Hibernate, if you wanted to use some other implementation provider, still you don't need to change the code because the specification is same, is very standard. But the backend implementation which you have provided through a jars, that is basically you are changing it. So your code is independent, it's not getting changed. If you will still change that some other implementation provider of a JPA. Got it? So this is basically another advantage what we can call as for a when you are referred to as a what is the advantage of a JPA. So if you will go to a particularly in Eclipse here. So you can create that particularly any project here. So how you will create a JPA project here? File, new, right? You see JPA project. If you will not able to see, you can just click on others, find out the JPA, click on the JPA project, click next, right? You can also do with me. Here, you can just say, let's say, banking app. Okay. Give any unique name for your project here. Then you will say the next. Okay. Don't do any changes or nothing here required here. Click on the next. So it will ask for folder. Don't do anything here. Next. Here you need to create. I have already created one of that user library, right? So here you can, because here you need to specify the jars also, right? So you can click on manage libraries, click on new here, right? Hibernate lib. Okay. In Hibernate lib, you can use add jars, right? So I will add external jars here. You can select all these required jars, whatever you have downloaded here. So for that, you need to download these Hibernate jars, right? So this is from Hibernate release 5.14.4.17. And here you can select all these jars, open, right? Apply and close, right? So I will just select it here. This is basically right. You can click on finish. Click OK. Okay. Still you will get that pop-up, but ignore that pop-up. Okay. So you will get that banking app new. Okay. Once you will get that banking app new, if you will see, this is basically we are working with plain Java project with the JPA. Here you will see JPA content, and here inside that SRC you will see meta INF. Here you will see persistent.xml. So in this persistent.xml, basically we need to create. So the name of the persistent unit, this is we are going to use it for creating a persistent unit, entity manager, factory, and entity manager. Okay. And here also we will provide all the details related to connections and everything. Got it? Now, if you will basically work with this, so here we need to specify all other details, right, for your classes and everything. Like that. Now you will also see here all these jars. You will see here these jars are available automatically here. Okay. Now, if you wanted to copy, so rather than to do this, I have already got it. So take this syntax from here. Class properties. Right. So these properties, you can just take it here. So these properties, as I told you already, right? These properties are nothing but which you are using is for JDBC URL, your user ID, password, driver, and there is a logging, and that there is also you need to specify a Postgres SQL dialect. Okay. So dialect is nothing but which particular database you wanted to use it. Based on that, we can use that particularly a dialect here. Got my point? Also, you need to provide that connector jar as well. Yes. See. So connector jar also you required, right? Because otherwise again you will get that particularly a error for a. So configure build path and class path, add jar, Postgres, line close. Clear? So this is the HBM to DDL auto is create. I will tell you that what is the here. You can also create the table automatically also. If there is these tables are not available in your database, still you can create it. Are you getting my point? So this HBM and that Hibernate can help it to you for this purpose as well. So com dot app dot process here. Let's say customer operations. Okay. Sorry. So create like this project. How to create a project? File, new JPA project. Right? Click here. Then give the name. Correct. Let's say e-governance app. Next. Right? Don't do anything. Next. Right? Here you can create that one library. New. right? mylib2, ठीक है. Okay, select this mylib2, add external jars, select all these jars whatever you have downloaded it here, apply and close, open. You will see all these jars will be available in this mylib2. So these jars you are using it, correct? Then you can click right mylib2, apply and close, right? So select this mylib2, whatever. In your case, you will see only one. If you have not yet created, I have created it 3 times. Same. Finish. Right? So it is just validating here. Click OK. Ignore this one. You will see e-governance app here. Like this. So you will have a persistent.xml. Here you can get this properties, javax.persistent.jdbc URL, user ID, password, like this. Based on these properties, it will retrieving the values here. Okay. Now, if you wanted to get this basically into your Java code, so customer operation. So I need to create that persistent unit here, right? And the entity manager. So simple, you can just take persistent manager factory here. So entity manager factory from persistent dot create entity from this persistent. What is this banking JPA? So you can come up here, right? So in my persistent.xml, I have this banking app new. This is named basically we will provide it to create an entity manager factory here. Okay. So entity manager factory here, you can just see, come up here and pass it, right? So this persistent unit, basically using that, we are creating entity manager factory and entity manager dot begin transaction. Okay. Now what you will say, you will create one particular class again. New. So this is a Pojo class which we are mapping with the table here, right? com.app.po. So, customer. ठीक है? Click on finish. So here you will have a private int, right? It's a ID. Private int, what we can call as for name. Private int, let's say for email. So, string. String. Okay. I will generate as a segregator. Right. Source segregator 2, 3 generated. Okay. Now, so if you will not provide any annotations like that, it will be considering as the same. Otherwise, you need to specify as a table name and this ID and these fields as well. Okay. Also, we will basically provide that constructor. Here you will say string name this dot email ID. ठीक है. So I wanted to save this into a customer. As of now, I haven't created any table into our database. ठीक है, as a name as a customer here. ठीक है, I haven't specified any ID also here. Right? Say one. So we will see exactly what happens, right? So here, let's say James @gmail.com. ठीक है, import it, right? So it is, we need to make it as a public. ठीक है. Now this is basically we need to annotate also. ठीक है. So we need to specify this as a class. com.app.dto into a persistent.xml with proper package name dot customer. ठीक है. Now I will change that here database also. This database name I will use it for my database name is for e-governance app. E-governance app here. So this is the database I have. Correct. So if you will see this database, e-governance app. ठीक है. Here we don't have any such table. Select start from customer. Do we have? No, right? So it's not exist. Clear. So here coming back to, so we have defined as a DTO here, we have defined customer operation. So still no primary key attributes here, right? So here you need to use specify @ ID. ठीक है. So which is the primary key attribute, which is the primary key. So ID will be a primary key here. ठीक है. Everybody got it? Now this primary key will be generated on which basis, that is also we can see. Correct? Do you want it to insert from your own or do you want to auto generate it? Right? Now customer operations. Now, so there is a different methods you will say into an entity manager. Dot persist. So which we are persisting here? C1. Correct? Now we will say entity manager dot get transaction dot commit. ठीक है? So, and we are creating an entity manager from the persistent unit. From entity manager, we will create an entity manager, and then for this method we are using for to save any data for you is user persistent. Got it? As of now, still we haven't created any single table in this banking app or in this our what we can say. So persistent unit, here you will see e-governance app. That is our database name. All these details we have provided. Here we are saying HBM to DDL auto is create. So it will by default, it will create the table into a database. Correct? So that's why we are just trying to test it. If I will not provide it this, then I need to create the table into a database and then it will work. Correct? Now, if you wanted to just go with the customer operation. So let's try Java application. So see what is happening here. So you see, you should be able to read these logs. If you read the logs, it will be good for you. Right? Any problem, what is happening here? DDL, right? Auto commit mode, right? Everybody see SQL dialects and everything, correct? Persistent unit and everything, Postgres database. You see this dialect we have provided, they have loaded here, correct? Right? Like this. So let's go to our, particularly in our database table, see what happens here. Sorry. So there is a different error is coming, right? Select star from customer table is not exist, I guess they are saying. So let's see. Does not exist, right? Now we will again see what is the problem here. So, oh, we have connected into a HDFC app, I guess, right? So we need to connect into a e-governance app here. Query tool. Select star from. Basically, you need to connect to a proper database. Customer. Now you guys know. You see, this data is coming, and even though I haven't created any single table, that is the power of this, basically this overall ORM framework. Got it? Now let's see one more, basically a code here, correct? If I will create, right? So I will go into a, what we can say again, into a database here. So this is only you need to do. So if I wanted to go with the persistent.xml and I will comment this property. Which one? Right? How you will comment into like this. right? In XML, you will comment like this. Save. So now I will create a one more. It's something we called as a account. Class called as a account. Okay. And this is also you need to annotate as an entity, right? So that it can treat it as a entity. Are you getting my point? So this is an entity. So the table will be created. The name of it like this. It is assumed here. So this says also we need to specify what will be the primary key. Private int ID. Private string account number. Private string account name. And private string account type. Okay. So let's say saving account type, folder name, something like that. So we are saying that primary key attribute. Every time it is saying it here. So using these annotations, right? Otherwise, whenever you go with the XML and HBM, you need to configure all these details into a XML files. But here we are using directly annotations here. Correct? ID. So this ID, when you specify, it will internally treating as a, this field is basically a primary key here. Correct? Now it is saying this is not we have defined into persistent.xml. So you need to list it also. Correct? So go to your persistent.xml here. And here we will add one more. And here I will say account. Clear? Save. Correct? Now, do you think that here it will create it now? Huh? So this time, rather than to do this, first we will just generate a setter getter. Source generate a setter getters. Generate. Correct? Now, add a constructor also here. Correct? So this is the same process. So there is a nothing new here. Int ID, string, account number, string, name, string, type. Okay? So this dot ID, you can also use through a setter getter also. That is not a problem at all. Okay? I am creating this just because of I am creating the object like this. This dot account name is equal to account name. You can also use a setters also. That's not a problem. But I am just this dot account type here, and this dot account number is equal to a account number. Okay? Like this. So we will create this into a again customer operation here. And rather than to insert a customer, we will insert a now this time a simple account. A1 is equal to a new account. And you can specify. So this primary key we are inserting every time, right? Make sure that whatever you are inserting this primary key, it has to be a different, otherwise you will get the constant violation, right? Correct. So in the account, what is the second parameter is? Account number, account name, and account type. So account number is, name is, let's say, James. Here it's say saving. Okay. So what we are doing it here, it's a A1 and we will import it. Correct. Now we will see, run it, right? So do we have added here into persistent.xml? Yes, we have added. Clear. Customer operations here. What we can say, what we can do, run as Java application. Okay. So do we get that error or not? You see, right? This account is not exist. So either you can do one thing, you can again go to database and create a table, right? So what I will do here, in the database table, I will go and I will create a table here. Same, I will use that fields and everything remains same. Int ID, primary key, correct? Because I am not providing any annotation for mapping the columns with the particular fields, right? So in our Java, whatever we have the fields, so we have the fields like this, correct? Account number, account name, and account type. So this dot ID we have already created, right? So second is we have that, let's say account number will be a text. Okay. Account name, let's say varchar. Okay. Then you have account type is also a, let's say, text. Clear? Create table. So field name, as of now, if you don't provide any mapping from in the class, what is the column you are mapping? You can just say it is a map with the particularly what we can call as with the this field name and the column name will be remain same. Oh, this is IES already in use. Account ID. Oh, yeah, yes. Okay. Here is ID. Correct. This account ID will also need to change it in our Java. So field has to be a same if you don't specify some other fields. Correct. Here. And I will change that segregators also. Okay. Clear? Yeah. Annotation is already there now for this. I don't change annotations. So there is a no such error, nothing. Account table has been already there. Now run the Java application. You see, now this time it is successful. Clear? Go to database. Say select star from account. Data is coming here. Correct? So this way you can create a